Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by SeatGeek. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers here. We kick off our position breakdowns today as we are ramping up towards the NFL draft. We're starting with quarterback prospects. Several names have been talked about for months now, like Miami quarterback Cam Ward and Colorado's Shadur Sanders. But there are a lot more names we'll hear called at the end of the month, with the draft being April 24th through 26th. Helping me talk all things QBs today, our very own Saints legend, Luke McCown. Luke, it's great to have you back on the New Orleans Saints podcast. It's been a little bit of time now since we were at the Combine. A couple pro days have happened. How are you?
I'm doing well. Track season for my kiddos is starting to wrap up, and so the late nights, track season can track meets can get long because my kids run the 400 and the 4x4, and 4x4 is generally the last meet.
Yeah.
And it can create some late nights. So glad that that's kind of wrapping up a little bit, but it's been good.
Yeah. Well, spring is basically underway and we are getting ready for the NFL draft. So had to have you on to preview the quarterback prospects that we had.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of noise around a bunch of them, but last year 6 went in the first round. How do you think that the talent and depth compares to last year's draft?
Yeah, overall, talent-wise, I don't think, and I think that this, I'm not stating anything that's not been said before. I don't think that overall talent-wise, it's quite what it was last year. When you talk about Caleb and Jayden Daniels and what he did this year, obviously a Heisman Trophy winner. You got Bo Nix. You just got to, everybody, all the things that these guys did on the field when they got into the regular season, kind of proved to you what they were, why they were considered where they were and drafted where they were. And so I don't think overall talent wise, you get that from this class. That's not to say that there's guys that aren't worthy. Obviously, necessity kind of rules the day when it comes to the draft. And so teams that need quarterbacks are going to get quarterbacks. And it really doesn't matter what the prognosticators say. It really doesn't matter, what the presumed talent level is. There's going to be guys that go in areas that maybe they shouldn't otherwise, simply from the standpoint of need. And like I said, necessity becomes king on draft day. And if you need a quarterback, you have to go get one.
We're once again following the saga of Aaron Rodgers and where he's going to land. It seems like it's going to be with the Steelers. Yeah. What are some of the NFL teams that you think do have that need at quarterback that will be drafting for one?
Yeah, well, obviously the Steelers, they're trying to address that, with Aaron, and it sounds like that's getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. Obviously, the Oakland Raiders are one that you would kind of go, well, they need a guy. They've tried a few guys in the past, and it just hadn't really been one to stick yet. I think there are several teams that you look at and what's New York going to do? I mean, they've got obviously Russ and J-Boo now, and so what's their mindset? Do they feel like they're set? They've got 2 veteran guys that have been in the league, that have won games, that have been successful. What's their mindset? I know a lot of people have tried to attach Shadur to the Giants in some way. But to me, I think the move in signing both of those pieces tells you that they're not in the market, that they're not interested in a quarterback, that they're going to go about it with a veteran presence and not kind of hitch their wagon to a rookie. Because quite honestly, the Giants have to win this year. I mean, that staff is probably going to be given a short leash, I would think, and so I can see why they're going to go the veteran route. Cleveland obviously has been quarterback needy since I was drafted there in 2004. So they're always looking to be in a spot there. I think Kirk Cousins makes a lot of sense. He's got a background with Kevin Stefanski, and if that happens, then they're out of the quarterback market as far as the draft goes, I think. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. I mean, there's again, the quarterback pick early in the draft is always the sexy pick because everybody goes, well, you got to have a franchise guy. Well, you got to have yeah, but you can set your franchise back. If you reach for a guy that's not a franchise guy, you're going to turn the whole building around because coaches at that point are going to be on the hot seat. And so I think you're going to find a lot of teams that are going to explore every option outside of drafting one. Save Cam Ward. I think that's, you can probably write that in stone after his pro day. I think that he's going to go to Tennessee. And I think that's probably the surest bet for where a quarterback's going to go in this draft so far. And that'll be the right play for Tennessee. They've got to get that right. And I think Cam's the only one worthy of that pick, as a number one in this draft.
Cam Ward out of Miami, he didn't participate in the combine, but as you mentioned, did do the on-field drills through at his pro day in Miami. What did you see? Why do you think that he really solidified himself in that?
Yeah, I think he's a little more dynamic than just about every other guy in this draft. He plays with extreme confidence. His journey is one that you make movies out of, right? A 0-star recruit, Incarnate Word in Houston, and kind of growing from there. And so this trajectory that he's been on for the last 4 years is really impressive. And as an evaluator, it makes you go, man, he had that type of hunger, that type of chip on his shoulder, whatever you want to call it, that his progression, his growth is so impressive that you have to expect that it's going to be that much more so when it's his job, when he's not divided in school, when he's got plenty of the money and the resources to apply to his body, apply to training, all the different things that he's going to do all the necessary things off the field to become as good as he can be. And so I think as an evaluator, as a team, you look at it as a coaching staff, you look at that and go, man, that's our guy. And then when he shows it to you on the field and the things that you see in shorts that obviously don't mean a whole lot, obviously, but when it matches what the tape shows, that's the big deal. When your traits match what shows up on tape and it leads to productivity, that's when it all kind of comes together. And I think Cam did that magically. I don't think that he's some wildly athletic. He's not an Anthony Richardson athletic kind of a guy like that. But he's slippery enough. He gets out of the pocket well. He understands angles and timing and rhythm. He gets it from a passer's perspective, and plays with just enough of the off script and athletic ability that you would need to be successful. And I think that's what separates him from the rest of the guys in this group.
When you look at somebody like Jaylen Milroe, who did rush for 20 touchdowns, has that ability with his legs, is that something you value based on scheme and what you're doing as the NFL team, their offense? I mean, where do you rank that?
Yeah, no, it's extremely valuable. But like you just said, it will be more valuable to a certain scheme, right? You would see that skill set being very well played out in a Philadelphia Eagles and in a Kellen Moore's system. It would be very well played out in a in a Baltimore Ravens system, even in a Buffalo Bills system where they use Josh that way a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I think over the last, whatever it is, 2 or 3 seasons, Josh has led the league in touchdown runs over that span of 3 years or so. And so he's one of my favorite guys in this draft. It's not like I think that he's going to, somehow jump into the first round. I don't. I tweeted this a couple of days ago. I think that he's got the highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks in this draft because of his skill set, because of the traits that he has. He's incredibly smart. He's a great leader. And he has all the raw athleticism that you would want to build around. He needs to get polished up, and some team out there is going to fall in love with it. And I had a conversation with Kurt Warner on Twitter just the other day, kind of a back and forth. And it's just because he's raw and has the traits doesn't mean he'll ever realize them. But coaches in the NFL are generally, and I say this tongue in cheek, egotistical enough. They believe they can coach that guy up. They believe that their coaching will get him to the next step, to the next level of progression or development. And somebody's going to fall in love with him and probably take him. I think I don't see him going any lower than probably the 4th round because I think that his skill set, his traits are probably different, not probably, are different than just about anybody else in this draft.
Somebody that's on everyone's radar, I have seen his name associated with the Saints a little bit, is Jackson Dart, Ole Miss quarterback. I've seen him comped to Gardner Minshew. How do you feel about him? Do you think that's a good comparison?
I don't think that's a good comparison at all. I think Jackson's really sharp. I do. And his rise since the Senior Bowl, through his combine performance and then through his pro day performance, has been something to watch. I think he has played himself into the first round, potentially at number 9. As much as the kind of the aura has been lately around Mickey and Kellen and visiting all these quarterbacks in their pro days, it really seems like that it's quite a possibility. And now again, I still believe that theirs will be a philosophy of best available. And when it comes to 9, I don't know that at number 9 that they're going to believe that Jackson's the best available on the board. He'll be the best quarterback available, I believe, at that point. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think it's Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. I think Shadur's after that. Then I think it's Tyler Shuck, probably somewhere in the 2nd round. And then from there, it's McCord, it's Milroe, it's Ewers, and Howard. They'll all be interchangeable somewhere in the 3rd to 4th round. I don't see any of those guys probably falling outside of the 5th round. I think that's probably the depth of it. But I do think that Jackson would fit Kellen Moore's offense. I think I've spent some time with Jackson in the off seasons prior in Dallas at some quarterback camps. He's built just like Dak Prescott. Big, he's got a strong lower half, throws with a great base, runs just well enough, but is strong in the pocket. I think what separates him as a passer, he understands the different types of throws. You saw this at the Senior Bowl, the different types of throws necessary, the back shoulders down the seam, or when to stop a guy. Or I just think that he has a next level of understanding of the type of throws that are necessary. And it's not even just the understanding, but the ability to pull it off. Right? There's a lot of us felt good about understanding the types of throws that were needed, but we couldn't pull it off. Right. So I do think that he would fit. I think again, you look at his progression and completion percentage went up every year that he was in college. Touchdowns to interception ratio was beautiful all 4 years in college. And so I think he would be a fit for what Kellen Moore wants to do. Again, I think his comp is probably more along the lines of a Jalen Hurts, but that throws a little bit better. I don't see the Gardner Minshew comp, but I think it would fit quite well in a black and gold uni.
Yeah, 29 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. So very efficient this season
Yeah.
alone. So you think that he is going to go ahead of Shadur Sanders? Because haven't seen that out there.
Yeah, I do. And that's just from my perspective. I think, and Tim Hasselbeck said it this week, and I've said it for several weeks now, months even.
Yeah, you were saying
I
this
think
at the combine. You
I
were
think what
not,
Shador lacks is the high end physical talent to go in the upper half of the first round. Um, he obviously was very productive. Jackson State, very productive at Colorado. But when you're choosing a guy inside the top 10, it all has to match. I mean, you got to check every box. And somebody is going to say, well, what about Bryce Young? That's an outlier. I don't. And even though you would say, well, what about Bryce Young? Nick Saban would tell you he was the quickest guy on their team by far. And so there are physical traits that have to match. And then you get in trouble when you just rely on physical traits. Okay, so let's look at the Indianapolis Colts and what they're doing now after drafting a guy just off physical traits. He only had 13 starts in college. That they weren't necessarily wildly productive, but he has traits that nobody else on the planet has.
mhm.
And so they draft him at number 4, whatever it was. And so traits are what get you drafted in the first round. Traits plus productivity are what gets you drafted in the top 10, right? Shadur has productivity, but he doesn't have very many traits that set you apart. I would say he has an average arm. And this is not me. I'm not trying to berate him or talk bad about him. This is what I believe when I turn on the tape. I think that he anticipates very well. I think he sees the field very well. I think he understands progressions. I think he understands, timing and rhythm and throwing guys open. I think he understands all of that. But he's going to be limited in his ability to escape. He's going to be limited in his ability to affect the game with his legs in a gotta have it moment where stuff breaks down, and he's going to be limited in those things. And he's going to be limited in what he can do pushing the ball down the field. Lots of guys have been very successful in the NFL that had those exact same limitations, right? Drew Brees would be one of them. So that's not to say that he can't be a very good pro or even a Hall of Famer someday. But when we talk about where a guy's going to get drafted, and the slot that he should be projected in, all of it has to match up.
Mhm.
I've talked to coaches that say when you draft a guy in the top 10 with your number 1 pick, you expect him to wear a gold jacket one day. And most guys that wear gold jackets have some pretty unique traits about themselves. And then some guys, like a Tom Brady that didn't really have unique traits about him. His unique trait was just his grit, his will, and his mindset, right? The ice flowing through his veins. Those were his unique traits, but they weren't physical giftings. And so yeah, I think there's some things that when it comes down to it, I might be totally wrong, and I'll be the first to call it out if I'm totally wrong. It won't be hard to see if he goes second in the draft. I would just say for what I look at in a quarterback, I think Cam Ward obviously is a clear cut number 1. Jackson Dart, I think, provides more of that the physical capabilities that you want to see in a quarterback drafted inside the top 10. And then Shadur will go in the latter half of the first round, I believe. But that's how I see it.
Colorado's pro day is April 4th. What kind of scene is that going to be?
Oh man, it'll be. I can't imagine it. They're listen. Coach Prime is no stranger to doing it big, right? And so I expect it to be over the top and a lot of fun. And if you're a Colorado fan, it'll be the awesomest day ever. And if you're some of those out there that don't appreciate the fandom and what Coach Prime has brought to Colorado and kind of the vibe that's kind of taken place over the last 2 years down there, then there'll be like, oh, it's just a dog and pony show. But listen, I'm here for it. It's the game of football. It's what we love, and the more attention on it, the better for everybody, for coaches, for players, for our college athletes, and listen, I don't want to ever lose sight of the fact that these are these opportunities come around for these young men, and they've been working for them for their whole life. I'll never forget my pro day, and I'll just the how much fun it was. All these coaches are coming to see you, like they are. All these GMs, they're coming to watch you do your thing. So go out and do it, and enjoy it, live it up, have fun doing it, put your best foot forward, and then go to sleep at night and rest well, knowing that, man, I've prepared my whole life for this moment right here, and I'm getting the opportunity to do it. And if it goes well, and you up your draft stock, even better.
For quarterbacks that have taken their teams deep in the playoffs, you're looking at Ohio State's Will Howard, for instance. How much does that play into their stock?
I go back and forth on that because, when I came out, there was a guy named J.P. Losman that got drafted in the first round. Again, got a strong arm, but didn't have a whole lot of production at Tulane at the time, as far as wins and losses go, and yet somehow jumped up into the first round. And so you want a guy that has a record of winning, like a guy that, and this is why they go all the way, scouts and GMs, they go all the way back to high school. Like, what did he do there? And it kind of goes full circle with the conversation we were just having regarding traits and Anthony Richardson. His high school record was, from what I understand, really bad. There wasn't, for a guy that should have dominated the high school field with his size and abilities, that didn't have a whole lot of wins in his high school career. And then obviously at Florida, just wasn't stellar, and yet gets drafted number 4 overall. And then you look at a guy like Will Howard, who's been a winner, national championship, played in some tremendous atmospheres and gone through, especially now, gone through the kind of the playoff atmosphere of college football and what that'll do for a guy. I don't see it doing anything but helping you. And clearly, winning for a quarterback, you have to know how to win. We talk a lot about knowing how to win, right? How to play the down and distance game, how to play the turnover game, how to understand clock management. All that stuff goes into winning. And at the end of the day, it falls on your quarterback. And so to be able to have a 13-win season, or whatever Ohio State was this year and whatever they were last year, to do what he's done shows his command of all things that point to giving us an opportunity to win. And you would say the same with a lot of the things that Jaylen Milroe has done. And really a lot of these guys, Quinn Ewers going through the playoff process, McCord making was at Syracuse this year relevant. And so, the process, it at the end of the day comes down to, can this guy win football games for us? And so I think Howard's probably going to be, if somebody really falls in love with him in the 3rd round, probably be more like a 4th round pick, but he'll be a guy that plays for a long time. He'll be a guy that, I was drafted in the 4th round, but be a guy that plays 13 years, 10, 12, 13 years. Kirk Cousins, he might get an opportunity to go and lead for 4 or 5 games in a season. And then somebody goes, hey, we want to give you another shot to come and compete. And he'll build his resume out that way. But I like those guys. I mean, I was a 4th round pick. We didn't win a ton of games at Louisiana Tech because we were playing the likes of the Penn States and LSUs. We were outmanned, but I like those guys that kind of got to grind for it, and he'll have a long career.
When you look at somebody like DJ Ulanga and what happened with his career trajectory in college, I mean, he's an afterthought now, I think, when you talk about the quarterbacks. And it seemed like he was somebody that was really highly rated early on in his career. Do you think that maybe he could fall into another opportunity down the line?
Yeah, I do. I think for me, I think it's best for DJ to stay under the radar for as long as possible. There are some things that he's working through. Listen, it was well documented the struggles that he had at Florida State, and then prior to that in Clemson, and just kind of the moves that he'd made to try and put him in a position, put himself in a position to be successful and give himself an opportunity. A lot of pressure coming on that guy. I remember whatever it was 4 years ago, and Kiper going on saying he could be a potential number 1 overall pick before he ever set foot on the field. I'm going, God, that's a lot of pressure for a guy that's, and he was taking over at Clemson and all this other stuff. And so I think it's best that he remain under the radar and just continue to better his craft and get better and better. Stay out of the limelight, no pressure. Nobody's expecting anything of you. He's in you. And again, I was with him at a quarterback camp a couple of years ago. Such a good guy, such a down-to-earth, humble young man. And he's huge. He's a massive human. And so he's going to have opportunities and abilities that other guys don't have if he'll just develop the emotional wherewithal to stand I'm not getting noticed. I'm not getting talked to through training camp. Because that's going to happen. And that's a battle in and of itself when you're not a guy getting a ton of reps and nobody's talking to you, nobody's telling you anything. Do you have the resolve to just stay level-headed about it? And so if he can stay with it, he'll get an opportunity somewhere. Just because I think he's been through enough of it that he's building some thick skin, and guys with thick skin can play a long time.
Quinn Ewers seemed like he had mixed outings.
Yeah.
What do you see him as an NFL quarterback?
Wow. I would say that Quinn is most people would probably consider him an underachiever in college, considering the hype surrounding him coming out of high school. He forewent his senior year in high school to go to Ohio State. He was going to be the second coming, and 1 year into Ohio State, and it's I've got to transfer out of here. So gets to Texas and eventually finds his footing. Has 2 really solid seasons these last 2 years. Go to the playoffs, and he really did some good things in the playoffs this year. You saw him have command at the line of scrimmage. You saw him make some big throws. His is, I think, there's a faction of coaches that want to see a little more grit in your quarterback, and he's such a flatliner, so calm that it can be a turnoff. It can be I remember, because I was a little bit like that. I remember my experience with John Gruden, and he was like, "Hey, your guys need to see you get fired up sometimes." And so I think there's a little bit of that with Quinn. I think he's very talented. I think he throws the ball extremely well. He's another one that's probably a little bit better than average in terms of arm strength and ability to play football, but he's played a lot of football. He comes from with Sarkisian with a really good background in NFL style offense. Mm-hmm. I don't think that he'll go any higher than probably the 3rd round. I think his floor, as far as being drafted, will be the 5th round. Somebody will take him somewhere in that neighborhood. He'll get a chance to compete right away for a backup spot, I believe. And then it's just about the opportunity and the right system. And you can't control that part of it.
Yeah.
So his ability to adapt will be big to an offense that may not be the best fit for him. I think a West Coast, very timing-based offense would be very good for him. If he goes into this heavy play action, run the ball type, I don't know that will fit him a whole lot. But his ability to adapt will determine, how long he gets to do it. But I do think he's talented. It only takes one. Everybody will always say it only takes one to fall in love with you, and we'll see where it goes.
Is it too early to ask about Arch?
No, probably not. Probably not. if I were putting together, and I actually said this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, but I think there are teams that are putting themselves in position to have an opportunity. I'm not talking about tanking or anything like that, but with draft picks and salary caps and all the different, hoops and hurdles you got to jump through to get yourself in a position to maybe, hey, if I've got a guy that's 2 years left and I want to trade up, I'm going to try and position myself with draft capital that I can trade and get to a position where maybe I can. I think the same will be said for DJ Lagway of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Cade Klubnik. I mean, there's some guys that are coming out. I don't mean to say that they'll all be in the same draft. These will probably all be staggered, but those are three guys that you look at and go, man, they're different. They're different guys that can play, and we don't know that completely yet about Arch because he hadn't started enough games, I don't think, yet. But what you've seen is and he's got a little bit different demeanor than Peyton and Eli, probably a little bit more athletic. He's got a few more things in his toolbox that coaches are gonna fall in love with, and there's gonna be a lot of teams lining up trying to get in position to draft, one of three of those guys.
Isn't football just the best? I mean,
It
we
is.
could sit here and talk about it forever, and the next seasons and everything coming up for NFL and college. But the next thing is the NFL draft here, and April 24th. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Thank you so much for spending the time talking QBs for me.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Appreciate it.
Great stuff from Luke, as always. For Friday, we'll bring in John Stinchcomb, former offensive lineman, here to talk offensive line. So make sure you tune in wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by SeatGeek. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by SeatGeek.